Mike, welcome to the Leanpub launch video for Apache CloudStack, a production deployment guide, part one. I was wondering if you could take a moment to talk to all of us a little bit about yourself and about your book and what it's about and who it's for.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having the conversation with me, Len. So I'm originally an IT engineer. I've been in IT for like over 32 years now. I've worked in multiple sort of industries. I've worked at multiple levels. I've run my own organizations on a smaller scale at some point, which I've done 360 full fold this year and come back to. And part of that was because of things that were happening with technology that I wanted to help other people. And Apache CloudStack fits into that perfectly from my point of view. I sort of come back from like an enterprise background, a SaaS background, a service provider background, and Apache CloudStack is an open source product. And anybody that's sort of familiar with like hypervisor technology, Apache CloudStack isn't the hypervisor. What it is, it's the orchestrator for the hypervisor. So technically it can support multiple hypervisors. Now, some of them are commercial that you sort of pay, you have your normal enterprise contract, get your enterprise security blanket. So you can go and ring a team of engineers at 3 o'clock in the morning if it doesn't work. They may or may not fix it. They may make a good situation worse, or you may still be scratching your head. But obviously, with open source, it's a slightly different mentality because it's all about the community and about people contributing in the community. So you don't necessarily have that same safety blanket, but in other respects, a lot more people get to play with it. A lot more people get to break it, give their feedback. So there's like pros and cons to both. But the thing I sort of found, and I got into Apache CloudStack, is because there's a particular hypervisor vendor who decided that, well, their technology got bought by somebody else, basically.
Hmm.
They came up with a different licensing model, rejigged that licensing model several times, and a lot of people weren't using 100% of the capability. They were probably leveraging 30% of the capability, but doing it very well. They suddenly got a very large bill that they weren't really expecting, and goalposts got moved, etc. So everybody started looking for an alternative. This started happening 3 years ago. I found a number of products 3 years ago, and I ended up funneling it down to Apache CloudStack. And part of it was to do with helping the organization I was working for at the time, and part of it was for my own research, because it was clear you couldn't even run it for your own research sort of like nowish, because the sort of like licenses you've got to have, the certifications you've got to have, they flipped everything on its head. And I understand it. They purchased it. They want to make money from the product, and they've re-engineered the product. So it's not like it's a bad product, but it's just changed the playing field for a lot of people in every, whether you're education, whether you're research, whether you're medical, whether you're sort of enterprise, whether you're a hyperscaler, it touches everybody. And I've been to a number of conferences, and I've even spoken at one of the local meetups in Europe, in the UK, in London. And the thing that kept coming across was people were very interested. People were looking at an alternative. This is why lots of people were turning up to these conferences, and each year getting more and more. They didn't fully understand how to align open source versus enterprise. That was the feedback that I was getting.
Hmm.
So I've tried to put this book together because if I wrote a book about an orchestrator for a hypervisor, that doesn't really help people. So my book is about, you're the enterprise engineer who's got your hardware, whether it's a laptop because you're trying to build a test lab, or two laptops because you're trying to simulate two data centers, or you're trying to go for the full 9 yards in production because you've got 8 months to get off your existing licensing mechanism, and you have to find a viable alternative, but you still have SLAs for your clients, for example. You're still regulated, like say ISO 27001 or SOC 2. So you've got to make all of these things fit into something that's quite alien to you, but it is more than capable of doing it. So the book takes you on a story as well. There's a fictional organization within the book, as opposed to it just being an engineering manual. Happens to be a publishing company. I didn't do it on purpose. It's just how it all evolved. Um, and so going with that, then it was like, well, why would they use it? How would they use it? And then it's not just a fictional story as you go through the book. Every chapter of the book gives you chunks of code to go and build something. And there's like test labs within the book as well. So if you can only afford a laptop to a certain specification, you can still run it. If you can basically go and do it with a more powerful laptop, you can do a bit more. If you've got some servers in your test lab, and they don't need to be the latest and the greatest, they could even be from like 7 or 8 years ago with a bit of memory on, bit of storage, etc. You can run it all on there. And I've done it all on Ubuntu Linux as an operating system. So again, it's kind of a standard that any Linux engineer can pick up. But you don't need to be a Linux engineer to run what's in this book. Because if you go to GitHub, I've put a set of scripts on there and I built a harness to do all of this to fast track all my testing. So I built a thing called Matrix Claw. Matrix Claw is my own version of a claw, which bolts into Claude Anthropic. And I built a whole ecosystem. So it doesn't just write you some code, it does governance, it does testing. You give it access to that infrastructure. It actually goes and builds it, breaks it, tells you why it thinks it didn't work. As the engineer, you can look at it, you can say, okay, but it's got a whole approval process and everything else. And that's every chapter of the book I've run that on. And other books I've got coming out, I plan to use that same harness. And to make it easy for the reader, because that's quite a complicated harness, I got it to build what's called Matrix Claw Nano, which is all PowerShell scripts, not PowerShell, sorry, Python scripts. And that's what's on GitHub for anybody to download, and they can use it with the book. So they can literally go chapter by chapter with the book, build the test lab, or they can take their hardware with the book and those scripts, and they don't need an AI to deploy the test lab. It runs off those scripts, and I've tested those scripts with 2 or 3 different devices just to make sure it does actually work rather than set on fire in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much for that really great description and putting it in the kind of the practical context that inspired it, and the very real world context that inspired it. And thank you also for that great explanation at the end about matrix claw. I mean, we talked about this a little bit before, and we started recording, and you have a great LinkedIn post where you talk about this. But one of the amazing things about this book is that in the past, one person wouldn't have been able to do the kind of robust testing that you found a way to do on this book. And so one of the great things, when people talk about AI and stuff like that and publishing and books and self-publishing, the big kind of public headlines in the paper things are, are the machines going to do all the writing now and stuff like that. But what one of the opportunity you saw was I can build the kind of book that would have taken a team of engineers to test and prove out using this technology that's available today. So that's something that obviously isn't going to make the headlines, but the idea that there are people who are like professionals in publishing or kind of like famous people in the book world who have seen this as well, not from writing technical books like yours, but who understand that there are certain kinds of books that do take whole teams of people who aren't doing the writing to do all of the other work around it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's just amazing to see a book like yours come out on that, using that kind of process. And I hope everyone looks for the LinkedIn post. It's really easy to find. And I hope everyone enjoyed this launch video. I always like to say it goes against my nature to have short conversations, but that's the idea. And you just, took the ball and sort of, ran the whole play with this. So that was fantastic. The book is Apache CloudStack, a production deployment guide, part 1. Thank you very much, Mike, for taking the time to do this launch video with us today.
No, thank you very much, Len. It's good to talk to you.